Hello, fellow crazies of the interwebs. I'm a little under the weather, so I can't really project my voice today, but I still wanted to make this. Former depressed, agoraphobic, generalized anxiety disorder, and suicidal, burnt out, gifted student here. Or, I was all those things at one point in my life. But not anymore, thankfully. Well, I guess I'm kind of burnt out, but whatever. That's besides the point. Now I'm just some kooky Zen guy who wrote a book over lockdown inspired by how awful it felt being a gifted kid. See, it's even printed out and everything, but yeah, I'm covering up my last name, thank God. Well, I don't think it matters if people knew who I am. I mean, all the characters are animals, so I don't know how relatable that will be, but thematically, I try to get the feel of someone who is on his second season of thinking about killing himself. But the strange thing is, the main character hardly shows up in the book, and that's intentional. Listen, this was written by an amateur almost 7 years ago who was depressed, couldn't leave the house, and was going through a breakup of a 4 year relationship at the time. This is probably the equivalent to a bottom tier fan fiction, and I used to write Gundam Seed Kira Lacus fan fiction in middle school. Please don't judge me. But it's free, so give it a shot if you're broke just like me but have a decent amount of free time. The spoiler-free gist of it is, a couple of kids stumble upon a fox with an abnormality. The fox has two tails, which is strange. You have two camps. The protagonist is awestruck and puts the twin tails on a pedestal. And there's another character who believes it's a defect and decides the only fair thing to do is give them a good old mercy killing for being different. A pervasive theme of the story is about projection and neglect. That's the spoiler-free version. Skip ahead to my gifted kid burnout experiences if you don't want the theme of the book to be laid bare in front of you. I'm going to have a little animation on the bottom for when I'm talking about my book spoilers in a little bit. Just skip past the fox running through the grass, okay? And I already drew it, but I just realized I could have just grabbed my actual fox plushie and probably held this up instead of putting all that effort into making a really poorly drawn fox. Trust me, it's really ugly, but at least it's not AI. I don't like generative AI. I'm just throwing that out there now. But I'd rather do something bad than use AI if I'm being honest. So I said the main character hardly shows up in the book. Why did I do that? Well, just like with being a gifted kid, I had my own life I was living. But people had all these ideas about me, both negative and positive. That's where the problem began. They cared more about their idea of me. They never actually tried to get to meet the real me outside of what they thought about me. So I wrote the book to show everyone's imagination of her, and you, the reader, never really get to know her either. And I think that's the unwritten tragedy behind this book. Everyone's imagining just how wonderful she must be, or everyone's imagining just how terrible she must be, yet no one really cared enough to meet her and find out, well, who is she? The main message behind the book is, not only does the fox hate the people wanting to kill her, but she also hates the people who worship her. Why is that, you ask? Wouldn't being worshipped make her feel good? Feel worthy, even? Well, when someone puts you on a pedestal, trust me, I've been there plenty of times, you become a prize in their head they want to win over, instead of seeing you as an individual person with unique quirks and personality traits you want to be inquired about. Kind of like, oh, he's so smart, he has so much potential, he can deconstruct things people of his age and experience couldn't, and that's the extent they care to know about me. Not the fact that I loved video games so much, it was almost like a full-time job for me, considering I played nearly 35 hours a week while performing near the top of my class for my studies in high school. I made money playing video games as early as 15 years old, by the way, but no one knew about that inside of school. What my favorite shows to watch when I was having a bad day were Scrubs was the perfect pick-me-up when I needed hope. Drake and Josh gave me a good laugh. Futurama, like Fry said in an episode with the Star Trek characters, kind of just made him feel like he had friends to hang out with when he had no one. Granted, I had friends, but I was also kind of a loner. And Initial D hit pretty close to home for me with a young, talented protagonist who clearly had the ability, but it was a skill others demanded of him, not something he chose. Yet, despite that, when he's finally given the choice to hone in on it by his own decision, not because others forced him to, found out he could flourish with joy instead of feeling resentful of his progress due to his obligations. No one cared to know about how I was feeling, just what I could accomplish. Or worse, they've seen what I've achieved and began to say, "You're too smart," or "You're too talented to feel this upset." Yeah, crazy, right? Now, it might sound great from an outside perspective to be told how great the things I did were. It should sound great from an outside perspective to be told how much greater I'll become. But from my own perspective, it felt like it wasn't me they were complimenting, but my abilities or achievements I had no agency in choosing. It was an obligation to do well in school. I didn't ask to be put into gifted courses. I didn't want extra schoolwork that was extremely difficult for an 8-year-old to do when I just want to go home and play Capcom vs. SNK 2 or Power Stone 2 or Cannon Spike or something. I'm just naming a whole bunch of Dreamcast games if you haven't noticed. These were things I was never given an option on choosing. They were forced upon me, not asked of me. Granted, if you've watched me, whether it's on this channel or any of my other ones, there's a few, I think it's fairly obvious I love to indulge my curiosities quite naturally. I'm not anti-hard work, I'm simply pro-autonomy. They saw my past and saw how great the things I did were. With that knowledge, they projected a future on how much greater the things I achieved could potentially be. But the problem was, no one saw me for me as I was at present. They saw who I could one day become while overlooking who I actually am right in front of them. I'm pretty sure this qualifies as neglect. Do you see where I'm going on why I wrote the book the way it is now? I was like 7 or something when they put me in the gifted and talented education program. I didn't really know what it was or why they picked me. I just knew I had 2 teachers growing up. My primary teacher and the one that picks me up every Thursday. And while they gave us some fun science experiments, the reading and math they had us do was grueling, man. In retrospect, as an adult, it's really easy, but as a kid, they were hard. I was able to do the math with a lot of resistance on my part, but I still hadn't learned to read yet. No one had taught me by that time. So I actually had the normal class, my gifted class where I couldn't read yet, and a reading tutor Friday afternoons where she threatened to keep me after school hours if I didn't do what she told me. I wanted to go straight home and catch the last few minutes of Hamtaro before the episode ends and get ready to watch Power Rangers right after, not have someone yell at me for being a slow, crummy reader. And if you're just as confused as I am to know someone who couldn't read was put into the gifted program, I'm pretty shocked too. I did learn eventually at taking a test and passed it. They gave me blocks and stuff, then asked me questions, none of which I read. They read them to me, and I did well enough they threw me in with the other gifted kids. And let me tell you, my school life only gets stranger from here. Oh boy. Despite my marks, there was a major problem. I was selectively mute. I had never spoken to anyone at school. I could speak at home, but my lips were sealed whenever I left the house. This includes trips and fun spots my family took me out to. If I wasn't in my house, my mouth never moved. So what did they do? I had to see the school psychologist every week. It was fine. All he did was try to get me to speak up, nothing crazy. If anything, he did prepare me for middle school. I didn't know how lockers and stuff worked, so I asked him about that. Really helped with my anxiety when I would have to transition in 2 years. Transition into middle school, not transgender or something. I should probably clarify, because I know I don't come off very, I was gonna say gender solid or something. I don't know if that's a word. Let's just move on. Forget it. I'm gonna give it to you straight. I still didn't speak to people for several years after that, despite not having to see them anymore. Eventually, I had my normal class, the gifted class, and another weekly thing where, I'm gonna be honest, I never knew what it was for. But it was me and 2 other kids, and they just had us play board games with each other every week. Kinda nice, actually. Maybe they knew I had no social skills and wanted me to learn how to build rapport or something. I don't know. When I went on to middle school, I had no choice in my classes. Those of us in the gifted classes basically had the exact same schedule besides the extracurriculars. I was with them for a month before they moved me into the early ELA group, which also had the same people in the same classes besides the extracurriculars. And it was fantastic. I was struggling in the gifted classes despite being able to complete the work. And I was able to have assignments so easy. I was able to do both the classwork and homework with at least 20 minutes to spare in class each and every day. I would have been able to chill, but one of my teachers didn't like that. I finished everything early. I had to learn how to be busy or else I would be in trouble. And all I did was open the book and stare blankly at it and gently move my head around with my fingers just kind of gliding through the text as I turned the page every now and again. I wasn't actually reading it. So she stopped getting on my case after I implemented this strategy. And it was smooth sailing from there because I was mute, but my work was always finished. I got A's and I was extremely obedient. Like I didn't cause any commotions. I would often have teachers tell me I could skip out on presentations, which was cool to me, but probably detrimental in the long run. I still did the assignment, I just didn't have to present it most of the time. I even had a teacher ask another student to read my presentation I made for extra credit. That's how quiet I was. Like, I just did not talk, and people didn't make a big deal about it for the most part. And one of my teachers told me why they put me in the early ELA classes. Because I was so quiet, they thought I would need the extra help and that I didn't actually understand English or probably cheated on a test. But he said next year they're throwing me back into gifted classes, which sucked, man. Do you know how crazy it was to go from cruising through my assignments to having a dumpster truck of work to do right after? Like, usually you should build up to higher workloads, but no, I had to go from brain dead easy to almost no time at all kinds of assignments that would take me the entire day to complete, from A's to C's, so I'd have some semblance of free time to relax by doing just enough to get by. I was miserable again. Granted, I still passed everything, but the transition wasn't easy on my mental health. And I think now is a good time to tell you my relationship with the other students because from here on out, I'm going to spend time with both the gifted kids and the regular kids and share what I've noticed being in two pretty different groups of people. Not saying they're like actually physically or mentally, emotionally different people, just, some were just academically gifted. Honestly, some probably were, but they just weren't in the gifted classes. Some people were just slackers, to be honest, but they are still cool to me. First of all, I love them both, but I definitely grew as a person differently depending on the group I was with at the time. The gifted kids were insanely competitive, man. Like, I saw that bloodlust. I was in a classroom at a young age where everyone was focused on their work instead of goofing off, but I was lucky. The other gifted kids were also genuinely pretty nice. Not just to me, but to each other, I think. Well, I mean, they were definitely nice to me, so I'm just kind of assuming they were all nice to each other, but I can't be too sure. Maybe. I would hope so, because they were sweet to me, and I guess that's what matters, but I hope they were nice to each other too. In 8th grade, we had a substitute. She was incredibly antagonistic. When she called my name for a roll call, I just raised my hand and she screamed at me for not using my voice, and pretty much the entire class had my back and just about everyone came up to check in with me to make sure I was okay. Well, everyone was cordial and I felt like we all cared for each other. It wasn't until I went to high school and was finally given the option to pick my own classes where I started to feel a bigger sense of community. When given the option, I chose to take the regular classes for no other reason than I just wanted to coast through high school. And it was honestly the best decision I could have made. Like I said, I was always a bit of a loner, but I still had friends. I just needed to be alone a lot of the time. And my connections up to that point were based on shared interest or shared difficulties. The usual. And I wasn't sure yet if you could connect with someone unless you two had shared something relatable together. But we'll get to that when the time is right. The first friend I made in high school was named Yao. He was a friend of a friend and he introduced me. In terms of aptitude, we were quite the opposite. I excelled with very little difficulty and he struggled despite putting in dramatically more time and effort than I did. This isn't a flex, this is just part of the example. And I'm just stating facts. Like, no emotional connection, just raw data points. In our 3rd year, we shared a class together for the first time. We sat side by side, so I got to see firsthand just how hard this guy was pushing himself to try and pass his classes. This class actually had another former gifted kid, and I don't know about, maybe I shouldn't say former, because man, that dude was smart. We were like the top two. Our teacher actually pulled us both outside of class and told us we were too smart to be in his class, and he wanted to recommend us for one of the more advanced studies. But we both declined, and I'm glad I did. He was one of the coolest, chilled out teachers in the entire school. My gifted friends I still kept in touch with sounded so miserable because of their workload, and I was actually able to relax throughout high school. Like, when the day was over, I could chill while they were just busy studying all the time. It was great until it wasn't. Trigger warning for the next part because we came into class one morning and because we came into class one morning and the teacher was sobbing and the seat next to me was empty. So yeah, I didn't show up. I think you can probably tell where this is going, but he sort of kind of shot himself on a Friday night, and so his little brother found the body, and I don't really want to say anymore. Let's move on. You know, for the longest time, probably because of the media I was brought up with and because of the words the adults told me, but I was convinced intelligence was simply a matter of how hard you worked. So why was I coasting through high school, getting A's without breaking a sweat, and the hardest working guy I knew was still struggling to get C's? And let me tell you, taking the regular classes, I met so many talented and hardworking people who taught me extra layers of empathy I didn't learn when I was in the advanced courses. This isn't me throwing shade at my gifted peers. I love them to death. They were magnificent in their own way. As I said before, they have comforted me. But I think the rapport I received was taken to a whole nother level I didn't know was possible when I wasn't in the gifted courses. I can see this video is getting kind of too long. I was actually hoping this video would be one of my shorter ones, but somehow it's not apparently. I'm not going to share every bit of detail because it's getting too long. I just want to get this over with and I want to edit it and upload it as soon as possible. Anyways, because I was always finishing both the classwork and homework with a ton of minutes to spare, I often had other students asking me to tutor them, and they told me I was quite good at it. I tried to simplify with examples that were relatable, but what I personally got out of it was getting to know my peers a little better. It's not like any of them were stupid. It's more like they were just overwhelmed most of the time, or just needed the work recontextualized in a way that was relatable instead of detached like our books made it seem. One of the people I helped was genuinely pretty smart. We were taking pre-calculus together, so he had to have a solid enough foundation in math to make it this far, but he hardly had the time to do his homework or look over his notes from class. And how could he? He just became a teen dad, like acing my final, not a problem. Ask me to be a dad at 15, homie, I do not think I would have been able to handle that. Say what you will about becoming a parent as a teenager, but here was someone who had to be a dad before he was legally allowed to vote. It's kind of crazy. And I was lucky enough to have the inverse apply to me. I hope I'm using that word properly here. Where this time, I was the one who needed help for once. I had an art class, yeah. I needed help with art. Adept enough to be number one in my IT class, yet confused as heck in art. And the person next to me saw that, and I would have never expected it. She was hardly ever in class. She would actually cuss out the teacher pretty much every day she showed up, and yet, here she was, taking the time to help me with these projects that needed some finesse of the fingers. And it was like, she was a completely different person compared to the rest of the school year, or at least just around the teachers. She went from being super loud and disrespectful to pretty kind and pretty gentle with me. That probably sounds wrong out loud. I should probably phrase that differently. Don't take that the wrong way. She ended up helping me out with a lot, and I got to know her a bit. And sure, her grades weren't particularly good, but she basically had to become the mother figure for her household, and a lot of the other people I met who weren't getting straight A's were like that, or I guess just decent marks in general. None of them were stupid, they were just so preoccupied with parts of their life that were more important than getting a good grade. And once I overheard a conversation with a kid and a counselor teaching him how to make cup ramen because he was home alone after school with nothing to eat. Like, none of these people were stupid. I didn't have that kind of stress when I was little. I mean, I had my own troubles, yeah, but nothing to the same degree as a lot of the kids I met who weren't in the gifted courses. Some of the nicest homes I visited were when I was working with another gifted kid. Some of them had genuinely wealthy families. They had access to the people to get them the resources they needed to excel. They didn't have to worry about their next meal or taking care of their siblings in the same way. Maybe some did, but it wasn't such a common thing as much as it was for the others I met. And of course, they had their struggles too, but I'm not here to air out other people's dirty laundry. Like the burden of impossibly high expectations got some of these kids in really crappy, self-defeating attitudes. Burnout is no joke, you know. Never feeling like your best is good enough is no laughing matter, and sometimes being overly competitive can make it difficult to ask for help and, just build camaraderie with other people. Like, that's one of the best things about the normal classes because people weren't so competitive. Like, it was pretty easy to talk to each other and just get to know one another and just build something that wasn't about acing the class. I just know I'm glad I chose what I believe was best for me and not what everyone else told me was best for me. I met an incredible amount of fantastic people that taught me to not only stretch my mind, but also my empathy too. And that's something, sadly, we don't really make a priority to teach people. I didn't learn it from a book either. I had to live through it by wanting to connect with the people around me. And this video is starting to become too long already, so let's just get ready to end it here. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like and subscribe. And honestly, I don't really like saying this part. I'm considering just not saying it anymore for future videos, despite all the advice I get to have it grow the channel. But like, to be fair, I'm not entirely sure I care too much about this channel growing. There are still videos I want to make, whether or not people care to watch them. The amount of topics I want to talk about is pretty big, but I do for like the sake of practicality, I do kind of have to scale back to the ones where like, okay, these are the ones I want to make before I stop making videos for this channel, and let's just see where that goes. Because there's around 20, there's what, not 20, I mean I have 20 plus topics in my head, but there's probably 12 like I need to make these videos. Like I really want to make them. But anyways, I have around 18 years of on and off meditation and studying Zen and adjacent subjects. I'm really just trying to get that vibe from Zen and trying to explain it in a way everyone understands. Because I think it would help a lot of people suffer less. Because that's kind of the point of Zen, is to end your suffering. But we'll get to that video eventually, but it won't be for a while. And really, I just kind of want to share myself in an intimate way with anyone who's willing to listen. Anyways, thanks for hanging out with me. Until next time, love you. I still can't wink properly. Later.